We are recording with Mr. Howard Bloom on Sunday, February 18th, 2024 at 6:12 p.m. Eastern Time. And you've come on here a million times before, but specifically for one book, The Muhammad Code. And we talked about that, and kind of the one thing that always sticks out to me is if they don't fulfill the kind of genocidal mandate, then they will be roast alive on a spit in hell for eternity. And as soon as their skin burns off, the skin will regrow. So, or as Claire Lopez, former CIA, said earlier today, there is no two-state solution. There is one. There is one group that believes it is the mandate of the creator of reality itself, demands that they slaughter every last Jew, or as she said, the pig and the cross, meaning the Jew and the Christian.
Right.
There's kind of no rationale when debating. Well, there is no debating with it. You're debating an animalistic, fundamentalist mindset. But with that, I'm gonna shut up, and I put the link to the Muhammad Code in the description. We have discussed it once before, but not since October 7th. So I kind of wanted to pick your brain or hear you talk about it in light of the attacks of October 7th. But however, for the people that somehow or another don't know who you are, could you please introduce yourself?
Oh God. Okay. So I'm the author of 8 books. That's new. I was the author of 7 books the last time we saw each other. And including the Lucifer Principle, a scientific expedition to the forces of history. And it only a chump would say what I'm about to say. But according to Britain's Channel 4 TV, I'm the Einstein, Newton, Darwin, and Freud of the 21st century. So, and I try to cover I'm establishing a field called omnology for the promiscuously curious, for the carnivorously curious, for people who just can't stick to one small discipline. And because that is their glory, that is their advantage, because they can see a big picture that people who are committed to just one discipline, one silo, cannot see.
Hmm.
And so I'm, to the best of my ability, an omnologist because I go across all the disciplines that my limited mind can understand in science and history, and the arts in order to try to understand where we stand in this universe and what this universe is all about.
Hmm. And so could you maybe try to expand on I guess what Claire said about how there you can't have debate, you can't have a rational argument when one side is, the Cold War, for as monstrous as it was still two groups of people with two different ideologies that still understood the
Right.
the sense of like, hey, Moscow, DC, neither of us want to go up in thermonuclear hellfire. We're gonna bluff. We're gonna talk a lot of shit, but there is a rational. We don't want to actually press the button, right? We both like our lives. We both like our cars and our what our earthly pleasures. That's not the same when it comes down to something like what you've tied in with the Muhammad Code.
No, it's not the same at all because if the entire Muslim community of 1.9 billion people, almost 2 billion people, dies, let's say, in a nuclear conflagration, that's a victory.
Yeah.
It's a victory because if they die killing unbelievers or Jews, they go directly to paradise, and not just to paradise, they go directly to the castle in which God lives. And they get a room in that castle. And they get the 79 virgins that you've heard about. Those are for real in Islam. So, and when it comes to what that incredible massacre on October 7th, remember, a heavy element of it was rape and torture. They put a baby in an oven and roasted it alive. They raped every woman that seemed the least bit sexually attractive to them. One woman was begging them to shoot her so that she wouldn't continue to experience the pain of being raped over and over again. Um, and all of this is in the Quran. All of this is in the holy books of Islam. There was a bunch of guys before September 11th, 2001, called Your Brothers at Islam Publishing, and they were online, and they said, God has insisted that we torture the unbelievers. Once the time of torture comes, how is that torture to be done? Now, they disappeared as soon as 9/11 happened. But this is true. One of the arc events in Islam is when Islam conquered, when Muhammad and his crew conquered a Jewish community, something that they liked to do often. And they tried to get the leading man of the community to tell them where their treasure was. And he refused. So Muhammad said, torture him. And they tried to light a fire on his chest. Now, there's no word, unless I have not read this adequately, but I've been over and over it to write that book. There's no word on whether he ever revealed the treasure. And then Muhammad said, behead him. Beheading was one of Muhammad's favorite things. He defeated another community of Jews and confined all of their men, roughly 700 men, according to the Islamic sources, to a basement. God knows where they found a basement big enough for 700 men. But then Muhammad, ordered a setup in the town square where these men could be beheaded. And he brought them out one by one and beheaded them. And it took all day. And Muhammad sat there the whole time. Why? He reveled in beheadings. But on October 7th, that torture was not just deliberate and not just unbelievably barbaric and cruel. It was the opposite in the Muslim point of view of barbaric. It was the height of civilization. Why? Because civilization is following Muhammad's commands, following in the footsteps of Muhammad, step by step. And Muhammad, as you can see from these stories, loved torture. And he loved killing. And he loved what we call atrocities. They were, to him, the greatest gifts, the bounty of God, the generosity of God himself. And he loved humiliating people and tossing them into total terror. So what you saw on October 7th was the holiest of all holy deeds. Those men who accomplished this, the 1,500 men or so, were guaranteed paradise, especially if they died in the process of carrying out a massacre of this kind. Muhammad also said, and I have to paraphrase him because I don't have the exact words in front of me, but he also said, if there is a Jew in your hands, kill him. He also said, the day of judgment will not come till every stone and tree stands up and says, there is a Jew behind me, kill him. So genocide of all the world's Jews is the height of civilization. This is why in World War II, it was so easy for Adolf Hitler to form alliances with leaders in the Muslim community, especially the Mufti of Jerusalem, who was sort of the spiritual godfather to the Palestinian movement today. And a lot of people say, well, you can kill them, you can damage their property, but you can't kill their ideology. And then they don't explain what that ideology is. The ideology that holds the Palestinians together, the ideology that holds together the Sunni Palestinians, like those from Saudi Arabia, and the Shiite Palestinians, like the ones from Iran, is killing the Jews. So that statement that you can kill the group, but you can't kill their ideology has to be examined one sentence further to explain that ideology is an ideology of genocide. That's all that holds these groups together, is that one vision. And it isn't just the Jews of Israel, it's the Jews all over the world. And yes, you were right when you quoted your previous guest. The next on the list is the Christians. So at any rate, the Muhammad Code is the story of how all of this came to be. It's the story of Muhammad's life. It's the story of how he discovered the utter jubilation of killing indiscriminately, and of killing so that he could subdue, so he could conquer, so he could subdue communities and make them part of the Ummah, of the grand body of Islam, a community that was designed to take over the world. Why? Because according to Muhammad, God made this planet out of a clot of mud. He made you and me out of clots of blood. And if God made the planet and you and me, surely all of it must be ruled by God's own laws. And God's own laws are the laws given in the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sunnah, the biographies of Muhammad. And yes, to be holy, virtuous, and just, you must follow in the footsteps of Muhammad step by step. And what did Muhammad do? Muhammad commanded 65 military campaigns, meaning killing campaigns, and he personally led 27 of them. There is no hint in any of the Muslim holy documents that Muhammad ever regarded himself as a prophet of peace. That is a phrase unique to the West. He regarded himself as a prophet of war, period, a prophet of conquest. And I forget the exact figures, but he conquered during his period of his military period, just 10 years, he conquered something like 113 square miles of territory a day.
Jeez.
And Islam, this pipsqueak religion that had started in the deserts, I mean, Muhammad in 629 AD, Muhammad sent out what were called the letters to the emperors. And it was letters to the 6 biggest rulers of his day, the rulers who ruled the whole earth as far as he could see. And it invited them to Islam. And it said, if you don't accept this invitation, I'll be forced to use other means. And that seemed like a really silly threat. I mean, here was this bunch of guys out in the desert herding camels. How could they possibly harm the Byzantine Empire, which was the Roman Empire, transferred from Rome to a new capital, Byzantium, renamed Constantinople because Constantine was the Roman, the head, the emperor of Rome, who had made this move to the new Rome, to Byzantium. How could he possibly conquer the new Roman Empire? And how could he possibly conquer the Persian Empire, which was one of the biggest empires that history had ever seen up until that point? I mean, it stretched all the way to India, so that when war was being made in Egypt, there were elephants being used. Why? They came from India, which was part of the Persian Empire. And yet, Islam toppled the Persian Empire and took it over entirely. Well, let me tell you a story first. And the Persian king, according to Muslim lore, the Persian king, when he got this invitation to Islam, called his wise men and said, "Who is this guy? Where does he even come from?" And they said, "He is nothing to worry about, Your Majesty. He comes from a people of camels and fleas." Little did they realize that roughly 30 years later, they would no longer be running that empire, and the Muslims would be running that empire. And Muslims, it would take the Muslims 700 years to conquer the Byzantine Empire, the new Roman Empire, but piece by piece, and using a word that the Islamic documents, Muhammad himself uses frequently, patience. They pursued that multi-generational project in 1453, after 700 years of patient encroaching on Roman Empire territory. they took the Roman Empire. So Islam's not, we pretend Islam is a religion. Now, look, when the Muslim Brotherhood, which runs many of the Muslim organizations in the United States, came to America, they issued a document on what they intended to do. And it said, we will get these Western civilizationers, there's these barbarians, to take apart their civilization with their very own hands. And we will put Islam in charge. That's been the mandate for Americans like Rashida Tlaib ever since. Whether I'm sure she knows it. She's not a stupid woman by any stretch of the imagination. How well studied she is, I do not know. But this is what we're up against when we're up against Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. Plus, the unspeakable brutality of the Gaza war in killing civilians. We don't actually know how many civilians have been killed because we're getting all this information from Hamas, from a propaganda agency that they call a health agency. And they include all of the Hamas soldiers killed as if they were civilians, as if they were children and women. That's not true. But Hamas 20 years ago set about a process actually dictated by another part of the Quran, by the strategy Muhammad used in what's called the War of the Trench. And this strategy, which was also used by Osama bin Laden, because it's basic to Islam, is build tunnels. And they built over the course of 20 years using materials sent to them for humanitarian purposes. Remember, they steal anything that's brought in for humanitarian purposes. Mm-hmm. They built 311 miles of tunnels. And there's been some indication that it's more than that. So where did they build it? They built this military infrastructure, these military tunnels. They deliberately built them under mosques, hospitals, schools, and even the United Nations headquarters. They built this massive information processing center under the United Nations headquarters, UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Works Agency, which distributes the food and other so-called humanitarian goods in Gaza. And did the UNRWA people know about it? Well, guess what? There are wires, bundles of wires, this thick, the thickness of your calf, running from the UNRWA headquarters down 150 feet into the tunnel. You think nobody noticed this showing up on their electric bill? Plus, the staff, we were tossed into agony over these horrible Israelis attacking poor innocents at Al-Shifa Hospital. And Al-Shifa Hospital turned out not just to be one of the centers of a command and control center for Hamas, but a good portion of its staff, including the head of the hospital, were Hamas members. So, and then, all the journalists, we're told, have been killed in Gaza. A whole mess of them participated in the October 7th massacre. I mean, granted, if you're a photographer, that's a great position from which to photograph everything. But you participate in the massacre. It was originally, they thought 7, and now it's up to 15 or something like that. Journalists who participated in this. Well, and plus UNRWA provides the education for Gaza, and the education is an education in killing Jews. The education is an education in radical military Islam. So is it true that even women and children are enemies? Yes, they've been educated to be kamikazes against Jews. And as for, and you know, the people who are responsible for these massive amounts of civilian casualties are Hamas, because they have built their structures and their nerve centers in tunnels underneath the hospitals. And then they have the gall to gather up to 5,000 people fleeing the conflict around these hospitals. Why? To use them as human shields. And when one of them dies, or 100 of them die, or 1,000 of them die, guess what that means to Hamas? All of those deaths are victories.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of those persons is regarded as a shahid, as a martyr, as a person who went directly to paradise because he or she died in the act of trying to kill the enemy.
Mm.
And what do the Hamas leaders say, not to you and me, but among themselves, about these horrendous amounts of deaths caused by the fact that they have gathered the biggest mobs they can to put them over their command and control centers? They've invited the deaths of all of these people so they could use those deaths as propaganda against Israel. And they say, we are a nation of martyrs. Meaning we are, or to put it more succinctly, in another phrase that does the rounds around the Muslim world, we love death more than you love life. And Islam is a tree that grows on severed limbs. So all of this is deliberate. The people really killing all of those civilians are Hamas, who have gathered them above legitimate military targets. And who is really breaking the laws of warfare? Well, the laws of warfare, the Western laws of warfare, say that associating any kind of military enterprise in any way with a hospital is a war crime. Now, who is associating military stuff with hospitals? When they have their tunnels under hospitals, when they store weapons in hospitals, when 10% of the staff of those hospitals are Hamas members. That war crime is on the heads of the leaders of Hamas, who, by the way, the two major leaders of Hamas are worth $11 billion between them. So what's the difference between the head of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, and the two heads of Hamas? Nothing. Why? Because not only do they both are they both inspired by and love the Nazi ideology, and not only are they both committed to the extermination of the Jews, but they have both siphoned billions of dollars off of their people. And what happens to all this humanitarian aid when it goes into Gaza? According to the Israeli Defense Force, which I believe, that aid is siphoned off by Hamas as rapidly as possible and used to fill their tunnels with stores of food. And then, of course, and they don't want us to attack Rafah, and they have convinced poor Joe Biden, who is basically a very decent man, that he has to oppose. They're attacking Rafah. Well, what do they have in Rafah? Not only the usual underground tunnels, but they have tunnels under the border with Egypt through which they can smuggle in weapons. So if you're an IDF person and you're trying to protect the state of Israel and make sure that this kind of massacre never happens again, you've got to destroy those tunnels. And you've got to destroy the entire 311-mile tunnel system. And where is that tunnel system? Under civilian populations, the densest civilian populations in Gaza. Why? Because we are a nation of martyrs. And every 1,000 that dies goes to heaven. How could they possibly complain?
Mm.
However, we will show women weeping and wailing in our propaganda efforts to the press. Why? to get the West to take apart its own civilization by its own hands, just as Muhammad showed us you should do. So that's pretty much the bottom line. I could tell you tons of stories. I mean, the book is fascinating because I have spent my whole life looking for alien cultures, because the more alien cultures you can understand, the more you can understand your own culture and yourself. And the greatest alien culture I've ever found is Islam. And it is something that I can understand in my gut, that I can understand in my empathic centers. I can put myself in the mindset of a jihadi, of a suicide bomber. It's easy once you know how the system of belief works. And it is a huge mistake in the United States to regard Islam as just another religion that should have freedom of religion under the Constitution. Because any Muslim scholar will explain to you that Islam is not a religion. Islam is a total system of belief. It is a system of belief, most importantly, that dictates military strategy and that dictates how to set up a government. And any form of government that is not set up along the lines of Muhammad, that Muhammad pioneered in Medina in roughly 622 AD, any government that isn't that is perverse and satanic and threatens to corrupt the purity of the Muslim community. And thus, according to the Ayatollah Khomeini, the guy who ran the revolution or took over the revolution in Iran, and whose word is holy writ to this day, including in Hamas and Hezbollah, any group that threatens the purity of Islam, that threatens to corrupt Muslims, must be eradicated from the face of the earth. So the Ayatollah was very clear that genocide was simply another tool of war and of conquering the whole earth for the holiest of all laws, the laws of Muhammad, the laws of Sharia. Genocide was simply another weapon. Now, is genocide in Western laws of warfare, is genocide a war crime? You bet, it's the ultimate war crime. But it's a basic, fundamental part of militant Islam, military Islam. So, and anyone who doesn't know this is ultimately going to be like Joe Biden is right now when it comes to Rafah. One of those tearing apart his own civilization by his own hands. There is no such thing as a solution via a two-state solution, because we've seen what Muslim states are like when you give the Palestinians a state. They've had Gaza. In 2005 or so, it was said by all of us nice liberals like me that the slogan was land for peace. And the idea was if you simply give the Palestinians land, you will have peace. So what did Israel do? It pulled out of Gaza, where it had had communities, it had towns, and it dismantled those towns. Who ever heard of anybody dismantling a town for the sake of fairness? And what did Gaza turn out to be? And what did Gaza ultimately give us when we had a second state, a two-state solution? It gave us April 7th. It gave us the deaths under the most horrible of all conceivable conditions of 1,200 Israelis. And then, within days of that event, one of the heads of Hamas went on Lebanese TV and said, October 7th, you think that's special? We will do that over and over and over again until there is no more Israel. So that's why Israel has to wipe out Hamas. Because if Hamas survives, Hamas will do this over and over again. It has announced that fact. Now, unfortunately, none of this gets in to the American news. None of it gets on the BBC, which has been anti-Israeli for decades. And I don't see any of it appearing in the media anywhere, not even in the right-wing press. But these are the facts. This is what we're up against.
It is. I mean, it's not an original point, and I know it's been made a million times. But there is nothing kind of more insane than seeing the LGBTQ for Palestine.
Yeah, LGBTQ for Palestine, and every single one of them would be murdered
Be
and
thrown off a
raped.
roof, zip tied
Yeah,
behind, hands zip tied behind your back. At best,
right.
you'd be
And
thrown off a roof.
the black community, they've worked on the black community. They, meaning the Muslims, have worked on the black community since the 1940s, when the leader of the what is it called, Black Islam or something like that. The
Oh,
president,
the
Louis
the
Farrakhan.
the yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So
I'm
at any
blanking.
rate,
Yeah,
so the Louis Farrakhan gang
yeah.
got its start in the 1940s. Why? Because the Saudis were already recruiting the members of the black community, and they were educating them. The fact that they loved to focus on most was that World War II was a hoax. That Adolf Hitler was a Jewish puppet.
Mm.
And Adolf Hitler was setting up a circumstance that would allow the Jews to get the empathy, the sympathy of all of the world, and to give those Jews the state of Israel. And the rest, the Holocaust and all of that, sorry, that was a fantasy. That was a fiction. So that was the point of view of the Saudis in the 1940s and 1950s when they recruited Elijah Muhammad to start the Black Muslim. That's what it's called. It's a Black Muslim movement,
The
and and
the
they've been working on the Black community ever since. Now, is there any irony in this? Of course, there is. We know that European slavery was monstrous. We know that 1 million people died simply crossing from
the
Africa
Northern
across the
Passage.
Atlantic to the Americas. But the Muslims, the European slave trade began around 1700, possibly as early as 1650, which means that it was around for 350 years. The Muslim slave trade began in roughly 200 AD. And the Muslim slave trade until 1964 had been around for roughly 1,800 years. And because the Muslims were even more cruel to their captives, their slaves, their African captives, than the Europeans were, 1 out of 10 people died in the passage across the Atlantic for the European slave trade. 9 out of 10 people died in the passage up the Pacific Ocean into the Indian Ocean for the Muslim slave trade. And the Europeans stopped the slave trade in approximately 1804 when the British Parliament made it illegal. Did the Muslim world stop its slave trade? It kept it going until 1964 when Saudi Arabia finally declared it illegal. Until 1964, your parents' generation. So when we were all marching for peace in Vietnam, Saudi Arabia was just for the first time outlawing slavery. When we started our marches against the war in Vietnam, black slavery in the Islamic world was still continuing. So for black parents to name their new babies Islamic names is outrageous. It shows no understanding of history. And then for the black community to announce its solidarity with the Palestinians is even more outrageous. And then for the Native American community to announce its solidarity solidarity with the Palestinians. They don't understand a thing. Islamic history, which is the history of one of the two most important empires in the history of humanity. It is a blind thing to us. We don't see it. It's invisible to us, which is outrageous. Because how do we understand our world without knowing about Muslim history? So if you want a book that tells, and I should not say this, but tells the story of militant Islam in the most thrilling way imaginable, by telling its story, which is a really, I don't even know an adjective for it. It's an extraordinary story. It's a story unlike anything you'll ever read in your life. That's the only book I know that tells this story. And according to some of the experts who've read it, one expert said it's the most well-researched book, or the most well-researched book on Islam he's ever read. And then he went on to say, it seems to be the most well-researched book of any kind
Jeez.
I've ever read. So not only is it genuine, but I hate to say this for something that's so awful, it's thrilling.
Yeah.
And its opening chapter will explain to you what is going on with these Jewish women, these Israeli women who have been taken captive and are in Gaza right now. They're being used as sex slaves because that's exactly what Muhammad said you should do: kill the men, take the women as sex slaves. And he devoted an entire chapter of Quran, chapter 8, to exactly how you go about dividing them up. So these women are being raped every day.
It's I saw a tweet that kind of summed it up, and it was I know y'all don't actually stand with Palestine because so the artist Lil Nas X kind of, gets off it's the whole controversy shock porn kind of thing, right? And it's always aimed at Christianity, which is, hey, I believe in the First Amendment. You can do whatever you want. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. But right, it's the whole shock thing. It's him. It's like him dressed as Jesus, dancing on whatever. I don't even know what it is. But somebody tweeted, some other artist was like, "All y'all marching for Palestine. I know you don't truly believe in what you're saying, because he will not do that for Muhammad." And everyone was commenting like, "Oh, that's racist," or but no, that's the reality. The
Yes.
reality is really what that shows is violence works, and you obey violence because you will not do that. He will never do that. I
Well,
won't do it.
I've wanted to put together a podcast episode, a YouTube episode, for a long time on how Osama bin Laden won
Hmm.
9/11. Because first we sort of put Muslims on a pedestal in the United States. Then we, all of the networks, hired Muslim women as their news anchors, even PBS. So by the time October 7th came, the Muslims owned the BBC, and the Muslims were heavily influential in ABC, CBS, NBC, and PBS, so that they could make sure that the story of October 7th was told from the absolutely false point of view being put out by the Islamic world.
Well, you also know it's not. You also know it's not a genuine care for that. They don't really back what they're saying about Palestine because one, LGBTQ, those would be the first people killed. But
Yes.
second of all, other than some kind of token shit leading up to the invasion of Iraq, where's been all, when's the last time we heard a genuine resistance to the occupation in Iraq? I mean, if it happened under Bush, it would kind of happen under Obama, and it kind of happened under Trump, and then it flared up again when Biden, to his credit, withdrew in the best way. Probably not, but hey, got us out after 2 decades. I'll take it.
Well, he was
No,
stuck with that because Trump had already surrendered.
sure, but this isn't the point I'm getting at.
Okay.
We're there for 20 years. We killed 1.5 million civilians, and when people talk about it, you go, well, you know, What do you expect? Do you think nothing's going to happen from 9/11? Now, whether or not that logic is right, I'm not even going to get into, but let's just take that. Nobody gave a shit. Nobody gave a shit about drone strikes. Nobody gave a shit about Abu Ghraib. Nobody cared about targeted killings. As soon as October 7th happens, within days, it's they want a ceasefire. What? And I'm not sitting here, happy that kids and women are being incinerated. No part of me finds joy in that, but there is a total lack of consistency. That the main resistance to the United States was how much money we spent on that instead of healthcare. No one's ever brought up the 1.5 million civilians. No one's ever brought that up because you look at 9/11, you see people jumping to their death in downtown Manhattan, and you go, well, there's going to be consequences. But as soon as October 7th happens, there's no addressing, and I've brought this up before. It's never fucking addressed. What's addressed is that there's genocide going on in Gaza. Okay, let's say that there is. Let's go with that and say that there is, and that they're not above military targets. What happened? Well, ever since October 8th, and you go, what happened before October 8th? Never addressed. It's never addressed. It took a decade after 9/11 before we got bin Laden, and then people started going, well, why are we still there? But within 24 hours, it's big bad Israel. And like, man,
There's another thing along the lines of what you're talking about in um, in Sudan, I think it is right now. In East in Eastern Africa, there is a war going on between two different factions. It was Muslim against Muslim, and something like 78,000 people have been killed by Muslims in that war. Do you see daily reports on that?
nobody gives a
Yeah.
fuck.
Do you see any indignation about that?
No,
It's
because
invisible to us.
there's no social credit
It's
tokens
invisible.
to
So
standing up for it.
do we really care about Muslim lives?
No,
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
no one does. And you can tell that because when's the last time anyone's brought up Guantanamo Bay?
Right,
Never. We're expanding it. Nobody
right.
gives a shit. What about the 710 U.S. military bases around the world? No, no one cares. It's when it's convenient. It's when it's politically convenient, and it's interesting to see kind of farther left components of the U.S. now, marching against the current Democratic president. But even then, no one deep down really cares. It's because it's controversial. It's edgy to say LGBTQ stands with Palestine. You like it because it's it's got some spunk to it. But no one will ever go over there. No one will ever truly give a shit. It's
But
because it's
here's one of the reasons that when it's Israelis doing it, it stands out. You know that in my first book, The Lucifer Principle, there's this research cited in which you study groups of kids, gangs of kids, and you discover that every group has a leader, an alpha male. It has a lieutenant who's a beta male and a sort of enforcer. It has a joker, and it has a nerd, one that everybody can beat up on. Well, geopolitically, for the last 2,200 years, there's been a universally acclaimed nerd. You don't have to go through the process of sorting it out. It's automatic. It's the Jews. So around 1980, when I was heavily involved with fighting for Black artists and their rights their rights to get recognition for their extraordinary talent. I told my wife that once we have given full rights to the Black community, they will turn on the Jewish community. Now, what was that based on? Knowing the hierarchical behavior of groups. Even groups of chickens have an alpha female, a beta female. No joker, but they have a nerd. The one chicken every other chicken is allowed to peck on. So you know how it goes. Alpha chicken is the first at the trough when it comes time for feeding. Then when she's full, she steps aside, and chicken number two goes to the trough. Now, the alpha chicken can peck every other chicken in the flock. The second chicken, the beta chicken, can pick every other chicken in the flock with the exception of
Yeah.
number one chicken. Chicken number three comes next to the trough. She can peck on every other member of the flock with the exception of chicken number one and chicken number two. The one chicken everyone in the flock can peck on is the one at the bottom, the nerd. And Jews have been accepted as nerds forever. And when the Black community moves up, who does it use as its nerds? Well, the Jews, of course, encouraged by Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. When I was in the music industry, that was for me a scientific expedition into the forces of history. And it turned out to give me everything that I had wanted. Because I was the spokesman for the Texan culture trying to come out of the closet and assert its right to dignity and respect. I was named the ambassador of Texas culture to the world. The same month I was named the musical spokesperson for the gay community trying to come out of the closet. At the same time, I'd been the spokesperson for the Southerners who were trying to punch their weight above the Bible Belt and not be ridiculed anymore. And that was via country music. I was literally dealing with the forces of history. And then I was heavily involved with the movement for equality in the Black community, very heavily involved. But every chicken needs someone to peck on, with the exception of the bottom chicken, who gets to peck on no one. And so once the Blacks moved up on this hierarchy, the Jews, they slid the Jews below them so that they could peck on the Jews. It was an automatic, it was a no-brainer that this was going to happen, that eventually the Black community would be in solidarity with a genocidal anti-Semitic group, the Muslims.
And what you have to realize is, as the bottom chicken, that there's no rational debate to no longer be the bottom chicken. You are hated no matter what, so you might as well defend yourself. It's defend yourself and go take out Hamas and be called a racist genocidal force, or do nothing, bend over, get fucked, and then take apart your own civilization piece by piece with your own hands, and still, eventually, in hindsight, be called a genocide. There's no winning. There is no appeasing with the monster. There's no negotiating with cancer. All right? So eventually you have to realize that you're hated no matter what. So fuck them. And that's not something that makes me warm and fuzzy to say. I don't like the fact that, you really start to, as my buddy Dale says, Dale's in Delta Force. He's 60 now, but I mean, he always says, we are the warring ape, and understand that that's all we ever are. Is, yeah, like, we can have IMAX and we can have 4K video, 60 frames per second, HDR. It's all well and good. But it still comes down to things like October 7th.
Right. And
Where
so
the most barbaric forces come out. And hey, man, it's popular and fun and edgy to hate on America. Nobody gives a shit when the United States can back Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan all at once. So it's try to appease the monster that hates you, and you'll be killed and hated, or fight the monster that hates you. You'll still be hated.
well, I love that position. Meanwhile, there's a joke that I learned in Israel. It's the British hate the French hate the Germans hate the Poles hate the Jews, and the Jews hate the Jews. So a case in point, Bernie Sanders,
Yeah.
who is Jewish.
Yeah.
And every day I get mailings from Bernie Sanders about stopping the war in Gaza. Well, what does stopping the war in Gaza mean? It means more October 7th. That's all it means.
It means
and
bending
Bernie,
over.
He's totally in the Palestinian, I don't know if you call it the Palestinian camp, or what used to be called a useful idiot for the Palestinians. We have Bernie as a useful idiot on one side, and a guy named Donald Trump is a useful idiot on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
He's a puppet for Vladimir Putin, period.
And all any of this has taught me, and I'd love for someone to tell me otherwise, is that the only accepted international currency is violence.
Unfortunately, every two generations or so,
We
um,
we
the
reteach that
whole
lesson.
yeah, the whole pecking order comes under question. And those in it have to establish their positions all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And America has to reestablish its leadership or become a has-been like Britain
Like
and
every
be,
other empire,
yeah, and kicked or be kicked around by China.
and
Uh,
it's
However, there's a little good news on the China front,
yeah.
and it's that the experts agreed 2 years ago that China was about to become the biggest economy in the world. And now none of those economists predict that. In fact, there's a phrase in the community of economists, peak China, that I called him Vladimir Putin. It's Xi Jinping, the dictator, who has tried to show that he is smarter than the economy and has jiggered that economy in all kinds of ways. That form of dictatorship kills an economy. That's
Mm-hmm.
what China is demonstrating right now. And who wants to be a dictator like that in the United States? Well, in theory, in the America we all grew up in, nobody. But in reality, Donald J. Trump wants to be that kind of dictator because he worships. I mean, he worships Vladimir Putin. Now, I'm not making this up. If you watch the body language in the Helsinki meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, you see him becoming a beta
Mm.
chicken and regarding Vladimir Putin, who's a foot smaller than he is, as the alpha chicken and being utterly obsequious and in utter obeisance to him. So the pecking order, the barnyard that Thorleif Sheldrup Ebb analyzed brilliantly in 1905, that lesson of the social order of chickens, what he called the dominance hierarchy or the hierarchy of tyranny, um, is without it, you can't understand what's going on in the world right now. And if all you get from my books is that, you've gotten an extremely valuable tool.
It's there. I mean, to me, it's the one thing. And to to understand something as true does not always mean that you cheer it on. No part
Right.
of me, no part of me goes, yeah, violence is the international currency. No, I mean it's awesome to think about. What's the next paradigm shift? If the last one was us standing up straight and using opposable thumbs and having spoken language, what's the next thing? Do we merge with machines? Do we abandon our biological emotions? Yeah, I'd love to think about what is the next step in intelligent life. However, I mean, I've got 10 fingers. I'm drinking water. I still have to eat food. I shit and piss. You can't tell me that there's anything other than violence is the only language that works. It's not fun, man. It's not beautiful. It's not something that we cheer on. But that's how you stop things, man. What happened on August 6th and August 9th, 1945? What led up in spring of 1945 in Germany? What strategic bombings did we do? There's no cheering it on, man. But how
Well,
else do you stop a machine?
it is so inconsistent of us to be highly disturbed, and we should be about all these civilian deaths. But again, they're all Hamas is to blame. Took the car keys of people trying to escape away. They threatened to take your papers, which you need to survive from day to day, away. They did everything possible to shove you back to the hospital among that crowd of 5,000 that they hoped would die because of Israel's attempt to bomb their control and command headquarters under the hospital 150 feet deep. They wanted those deaths. Um, so I don't know where I was going with that
No, I
particular.
mean it's no, no one here would change their minds, and it's sad, but no one here would change their minds until a group of let's change it. Let's change the mindset entirely. Let's say a bunch of guys in MAGA hats that look like me, white skin, blue eyes, brought AR-15s to Coachella and live streamed the murders. To tell me there would be any resistance to a violent uh uh backlash against that. There wouldn't. But because it's over there, and because it's the Jews, or they're doing this and they're that, and well, what about the resistance against peaceful Muslims? It's a luxury to sit here and resist it because you sit in Fortress America.
Well, remember, there is no such thing as a peaceful Muslim in Gaza. What do I mean? That's a horrible thing to say, right? What about innocent children? No, I'm sorry, they don't allow children to be innocent. They dress up toddlers as suicide bombers. They make those children from the beginning of their conscious lives to worship the Shaheed, the martyrs, those who die killing tons of the enemy. And those kids have new military uniforms when they're 5 and bigger uniforms when they're 8. And they are raised to know that they have a simple purpose in life. Kill the Jews, drive them out of Israel, drive them into the sea. And once you have made Palestine Muslim territory from the river to the sea, then you can pursue the Jews in the rest of the world.
Yeah, yeah, guys. It'll end there. It'll end when it's the river to the sea. It will finally. They won't go any further, right? Just like appeasement worked with Hitler. You fucking idiots. But
Well, the day of judgment will not come until every stone and tree stands up and says, there is a Muslim up against you, throw me at him.
yeah, fucking barbarians. And you know what? It works too. The reason why this shit persists is because everywhere that cancer takes over, it turns the actual physical landscape into a butt fucked hellscape. And then it's so shitty that you'll do anything to get out of it, including strapping a bomb to your chest. So
Right,
of
because
course it's going to perpetuate.
the history of Islam, of the Islamic, look, there are 56 countries in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and there's one more country that isn't part of that particular alliance. 57 countries in the Muslim world, 1.9 billion people, a territory, but the Arab territory, the Middle East alone, and counting North Africa, is 3 times the size of the United States. So when these so-called Palestinian refugees left Israel, for the most part voluntarily, because they were told, look, we're coming in with 5 armies. This is 1948. We're coming in with 5 armies. There's no way that these newly organized so-called Israelis are going to be able to defend themselves against 5 armies with tanks and air forces. So if you leave your home and go to current Muslim territory where it's safe, tomorrow you will be able to go in and scoop up the women as sex slaves and take all of the property. So that was the line on Muslim radio that got people to leave their homes. Was there a sufficient territory to resettle these roughly 4 to 500,000 people who decided to leave? Yes, they have a territory 3 times the size of the United States. Just an Arab territory alone, that doesn't include the entire empire of Islam. It leaves out Indonesia and Malaysia and vast territories, some of the biggest, most populous countries in the world. Yes, they had the space. When they expelled, meaning when the Muslim countries expelled 800,000 Jews, and in many cases took away their property, which was tradition, had been going on for 1,400 years. And did Israel absorb them? Did Israel resettle them in a piece of territory that's the size of New Jersey? Yes, they resettled them. Why couldn't the fucking Arabs do the same? Because they wanted these people as a political instrument, as a weapon. And one of the things that anyone who's been watching television news should have learned ever since October 7th is what we have been told were refugee camps were not refugee camps. They were cities, fully modern cities, complete with luxury housing for the rulers of Hamas. We were lied to in being told these were refugee camps, and nobody mentioned it once we started getting daily pictures of these Palestinian so-called refugee camps that were really sophisticated cities. Now, they're not sophisticated cities anymore because to get at Hamas, you have to get down to those tunnels, which are under hospitals, mosques, schools, and UNRWA, United Nations, buildings. So Lord knows how the press has been hoodwinked into not seeing any of this. Journalists are not stupid people. And yet sometimes they can be herded like sheep. That's one of the things I learned in being the head of the biggest PR firm in the music industry in the 1970s and 1980s as part of my scientific expedition into the forces of history.
Well, again, I think the kind of takeaway is to remember
So we should
resistance.
maybe go back to work.
Yeah. We'll wrap it up. I was gonna say, but yeah, no, resist and stand up for yourself and be hated, or be slaughtered and try to appease the monster and be hated. They fucking hate you no matter what, man. Stand up for yourself.
Yes,
I mean, Christ
that's
Almighty.
absolutely true. It's just surprising that Joe Biden had the guts to fly to Israel when this event happened. Bless his soul. That's
Yeah,
about the best we can expect.
I'll give him credit, man. I mean, send over 3 carrier groups. That ain't nothing. But yeah, I'd rather watch the people here scream and shriek about it. It's a luxury. It's a luxury that you're here and that you're able to say this shit because you get political brownie points from your friends. It means nothing to any of them. It's what's hot and trendy to say. So fuck them. But with that, Howard, let's wrap this shit up. I've kept you 15 minutes longer than I should have. Go into the description, guys. You can find the link to the Muhammad Code. And when you do decide to publish it, we will discuss the case for the
In
sexual
the case of
cosmos.
sexual cosmos,
Yes,
everything you know
sir.
about nature is wrong. Yes.
Yes, sir. Howard, it was good to catch up, man. It's been a minute. It's probably been since September or so since we chatted.
Right.
So let's do it again. Let's do it
We
again.
will. We
So,
will.
sooner than later. Let's not wait. Um, but Howard, thank you so much for your time, man. I love having you on. It's always a pleasure. I love chatting
I
with
mean,
you.
it's wonderful to see you again.
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Howard Bloom. Till next time, brother. Thank you so much.
Recording stopped.
All
Guys,
right.
thank you for
Have a great
watching.
night.
God bless you as well. Thank you so much. Good night. What's up, guys? I'm doing the sponsors at the end of the show now, or I'm at least testing it out. I don't know why I hadn't thought of this before. I don't like doing because the shows are live. I don't like I don't like sitting here plugging sponsors while the guest awkwardly looks at me. So go to the link in the description. My pillow. This blanket is dope. This is the warmest blanket I've ever used. Um and yeah, these slippers, I'm wearing them. They're cozy as shit. If you can hear it, the air conditioner's on. Air conditioner in Maine in February. But I got these slippers and blankets. It's dope. So go use the link, and it's I think it's promo code TPC for free shipping. After that, Fox and Sons Coffee. The only way I can do 1,420 of these episodes in a little over 4 years is by being caffeinated to the fucking gills. Promo code Tommy TOMMY, 10% off, and I think on orders over $40, it's free shipping. The Wellness Company. Dr. McCullough works there. Dr. Hodgkinson works there. A lot of these guys have worked there. You can go get all your supplements and vitamins and all that good shit, but not even for when you're sick. You should take it when you're healthy. Use promo code Tommy, 10% off. Trusted RX store. Gotta go get ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. Promo code Tommy, 10% off. So you want to take that in the early days of COVID symptoms. Prepper Food, Heaven's Harvest. I had on head on the founder was last week or the week before. He's a cool fucking dude, Clayton. Heaven's Harvest 25-year shelf lifespan. Got some of these big ass buckets right here. What's in these? Let's I don't want to knock shit over. Let's see what we got in here. Loaded baked potato casserole, chili mac and cheese, cheddar broccoli soup, cheesy lasagna, teriyaki rice, 25-year shelf life. Go use the link in the description for 10% off. It's not a promo code. Use the link in the description, heavensharvest.com/Tommy. Same with Prismatic Energy. It's my buddy Seth's company. They sponsor the show. Those are a bit more pricey, but all the more reason to use the link in the description because you get 10% off. Some of those run for $30,000. 10% off. That's $3,000 if you're retarded. All right. And also my own artwork, my own. I taught myself graphic design for 4 years before I did the podcast. If you want to go get it on a hoodie or a tank top or any of that shit, go to the link. Go to the merch store link, and or if you want to go just go get it on, I don't know, a notebook or an iPhone cover or whatever, or tapestry. I have some of the tapestries. If you ever see the video I do on locals, you'll see all the tapestries I have in my bedroom and my living room. Those are all my artwork. So let's jump from there and go to locals. If you want daily exclusive videos, I take guest suggestions. And I'll try to get the guests. I've never had a guest suggestion that I haven't pursued. Whether or not the guest says yes, that's kind of out of my control. Or my bag itches. Go to Patreon. Patreon won't let me upload because they're a fucking bunch of douchebags like Twitter and YouTube and iTunes and Reddit and all those other fucking assholes. Go to Patreon. You can still throw me a couple bucks there. Some people use it just because they have they support other shows and their payment processing's in there already. Or buy me a coffee, Kofi, Kofi. Go in there, throw me a couple shekels. PayPal is for fun's sake synthesis at gmail.com. That's my merch store company. That link is in the description. The email, if you want to do PayPal or Cash App, Tommy Carrigan, TOMMYCARRIGAN. Please support the show, guys. Now, some of you are lacking in brain cells and don't like if you ever hear anything like the episode I just did, where it's anything that slightly deviates from what you agree with. You are no different than an automaton. I'm not talking to you. You have no self awareness. You're a meat bag and nothing more, and probably something less. But for everyone else that has a brain and, appreciates interviews that they don't always agree with, but they respect someone's right to say something, or at the very least, you'll hear someone out, even if you don't agree with them, and support the show, man. I don't agree with everything every guest says, but I have to have them on and I have to let them talk because I got to hear what other people are thinking. If I'm only hearing shit that I agree with, then what's the fucking point? Like, legitimately, what's the point? If I'm just hearing shit that I agree with, what is the point? There is no point. So I have to have stuff on that I disagree with. And yeah, go fuck yourself otherwise. So thanks so much, guys. Um Thanks for watching. And yeah, I guess I don't know. We'll be on tomorrow. All right, guys. Much love.